Hey guys, I'm Raging Walrus and today I'm gonna talk about why I think some stories end in a disappointing way. When reading a book, watching a show or a movie, I think there are a few things that usually grab our attention or inversely push us away. One of those things would be the main character of the story. Is the character interesting? Does he or she have an interesting design, an interesting backstory and motivation? Then there is the antagonists. Are they smart enough? Are they powerful enough? Does their motivation make sense? Do they make the main character go through sufficient struggle? I think those are the key components to make a good story. Everything else is built around those two. It usually goes like this. Main character is chilling at home, then the bad guys show up and from there everything is a mess. The whole story is then aimed at resolving the problems caused by the bad guys. Resolution is at the end of the story and allows the characters to transition into a new time of peace with additional wisdom gained from their struggles. And that ending is supposed to be satisfying to the viewer. At least that's the best case scenario. In real life, a lot of things can happen to ruin something that was great until it was not. I think writing a story is like being a pilot in a way. You may perform a proper takeoff, a smooth flight over the mountains and the oceans, but if you crash the landing, we can't really appreciate how good the flight was until then. Then why do some incredibly successful shows have such an unsatisfying ending? I've come up with two explanations for that, assuming that the show was already pretty enjoyable until then, which means I'm not talking about stories where the writing was already a mess. The first reason is that the story was rushed. Do you remember Bleach? That manga about soul reapers with Ichigo Kurosaki as the main character. I was not a huge Bleach fan. I started reading it after Ichigo found Ulquiorra, which is, pretty far into the story already. At the time I was just blown away by the art style and I just had to read the story for myself. I went into it with some notions though. I knew what a Shinigami was, I knew what a Bankai was, so I knew some stuff and the story was pretty good. I especially enjoyed the arc where Ichigo lost his powers and had to take them back. I thought that was a nice scale down. The arc was a bit convoluted, but I appreciated it nonetheless. At some point though, the big bad guy showed up, Juha back. He was an awesome villain at first, truly terrifying in power, in character, and he was very smart. He killed a very prominent and powerful old guy, the typical strong old man in anime. And he did it in a way that was pretty smart, not with brute strength. He tricked him, and in my opinion, a character able to trick others is scarier than one who is simply physically strong. And the origin of his identity was such a plot twist, I really loved it. But he eventually grew too powerful, way too fast. And in order to beat him, the main character had to grow incredibly powerful even faster. So what happened? Why did things go so fast all of a sudden when the story was going pretty well? That escalation was so rapid and drastic that by the end, the bad guy was able to see the future and change his fate on the fly. He was way too powerful and his defeat was kinda unrealistic. Shonen manga as a whole has a problem with power escalation to begin with. The story starts with pretty strong fighters and it ends with creatures capable of destroying galaxies. But in the case of Bleach, not only was the power escalation too steep, it was also way too sudden, and here's why. Rumors say that behind the scenes Tite Kubo, the author of Bleach, was being rushed to finish his series in an effort to make room for the new titles coming to Shonen Jump. Before we had My Hero Academia, Dr. Stone and all those new titles that make a lot of numbers, we had titles that were older but who still had a legacy, like Bleach, old viewers but regular viewers. But the Shonen Jump, the magazine, wanted some new blood, so you needed to get rid of those old titles with legacy to make room for the new ones. It needed to end, so Tite Kubo could vacate the place and leave the newcomers to take the lead. The story was rushed because of politics. Game of Thrones was in a similar situation. As soon as the show had to work without the books, the showrunners had to make their own way towards the ending George told them about. But the show has been running for a long time, and it can get tiresome to keep working on something when you've lost interest. And that's what happened with the writers, D&D, because it was reported that HBO was willing to give them more episodes, was willing to give them more money to make the show. It would have had more than 10 seasons if they wanted to, but they were the ones who said no. The writers said no, and they wanted to be done with the show sooner rather than later. Giving the show 10 seasons would have been more than enough time to correctly set up the Mad Queen moment, and the ending of the show as well, with Bran becoming the king. Spoiler alert. But D&D were already set to make the next Star Wars, so it's safe to say that they wanted to just move on from Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones was rushed because of politics, but from the side of the writers this time. Politics are very important. We all enjoy our stories, we all enjoy movies, we enjoy books, animes, whatever entertainment you're watching, but those things have to be made by creative people, and those creatives need to be paid. And anytime money is involved, struggle comes with it. Creative decisions, salary decisions, contracts decisions, all that can get in the way of what could have been an incredible experience for the reader, viewer, slash whatever you want. But we also have the opposite. For example, I'm thinking about Tokyo Ghoul, a series I absolutely love, with deep characters and an awesome concept. The main character in particular, Ken Kaneki, is a great character, and I'll talk about him in a future video. But the series as a whole suffered from the same illness that took down Bleach: power escalation. Towards the end of the series, people were so strong they could destroy entire floors of building, with tentacles spreading all over the place. It was mayhem. The last villain was a monster the size of a kaiju, and Kaneki turned pretty much into Ghoul Jesus. It was a mess of power-ups. But Tokyo Ghoul wasn't a shonen, it was a seinen, and as such the battle aspect of the manga was secondary to the character development, which was truly the point of the narrative. Tokyo Ghoul was about a boy who learned how to accept himself. At first, we believed that Kaneki was struggling with loving himself because he was turned into a creature with cannibal tendencies. Anyone who suddenly finds out that they need to eat people to live would have that reaction. But we come to find out that Kaneki was always a boy struggling in his personal life and with his relationship with his mom in particular. Eventually, he remembers his issues, comes to terms with them, and realizes that he should keep on living even if his life isn't as pretty as he would have preferred it to be. Kaneki accepted himself and became the One-Eyed King. But the story kept going. For some reason, the whole purpose of the story was for him to eventually accept himself, to find a balance in his life, to come to terms with the world. And he did. When he fought Arima, for those who read the manga or even watched the anime, it happened in the anime. Once he beat Arima, even during the fight, he realized it. Live even if your life is ugly or something like that. But then it kept going, so eventually when we reached the ending, it was redundant. The point was already made a long time ago. And that is the opposite effect of the politics we were talking about before. Sometimes the show can be ended too early because the studio or the magazine wants it to end, or maybe the writer is done with it. But in this case, it was prolonged because, well, people were reading and they were making money, so they just kept on going and going and going. Sometimes it's done successfully. For example, Dragon Ball Z was supposed to end after the Frieza saga, but because of its success, it kept going. We had the androids, we had Cell, eventually we had Boo. Some people argue that Boo was a bad villain and that it didn't really make a lot of sense, but a lot of people enjoyed it, so it worked. Tokyo Ghoul, not so much. It was still enjoyable, but it kinda diminished the quality of the story. Something I consider a good ending is Hunter x Hunter, the anime. You see, Hunter x Hunter starts with a clear protagonist who has a clear goal and who needs to follow specific steps to reach it. The protagonist is Gon, a young boy who likes nature and who is incredibly agile and tough for his age. His goal is to find his father, who left the family when he was young, and to find his father he needs to become a hunter. That's pretty clear. That's why he goes through the hunter exam. That's where he meets his friends. That's where he meets Hisoka, his unlikely motivator. And ultimately, he does find his father after overcoming a lot of struggles. And the anime ends there. The protagonist found what he was looking for after he helped save the world. And he did it in a way that we can accept. That's a good story. And it worked because the studio that made it, Madhouse, had a lot of respect for the source material. The animation was beautiful. The story took some shortcuts, but they were all done successfully. That was a masterpiece, and that should happen more often. Thank you for watching. If you guys enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel so you won't miss anything in the future. You can find the drawing from this video on my Instagram. I'll put the link down below. See you later.